On the bye week, I found a golf course. I can't wait to announce another game.
Penn State, Michigan. Doesn't matter what the records are, it's Penn State, Michigan.
This game looks like a pick-em. The Nittany Lions are coming off a bye week, so we're going to see if they are rested and ready to go on their trip to the Big House. Blue White Tailgate starts now.
Welcome to Blue White Tailgate, presented by Coors Light. Steve Jones, my running mates Trey Bauer, Todd Sadowski. It's great to have you as you join us in our man cave?
Yes.
Sure, we can call it a man
cave. Man cave. Well, we have 18 TVs on the other side of the cameras that nobody sees. Right. So we sat back and watched the craziest, wildest weekend of college football. I mean, even you got into some of the games.
I did, including, I have to say, I apologize to the Mississippi folks because I threw both under the bus last weekend, and I have to keep saying Mississippi for one more week, but, you know, we'll see what happens.
Look, at Arizona State, you don't try to fair catch the last play.
Oh, unbelievable. And, you know, Coach Franklin receded to his man cave, he said, so why not us as well? What a Saturday for college football. And in Mississippi, do you think they know that there's more games? I think it was just such an unbelievable day for them. People were thinking, okay, maybe Mississippi State might win or Ole Miss, and they both go out and win. What a day.
Well, Mississippi State better find a gear. They've got Auburn coming up this weekend. So, I mean, that's the big one. They're finding Auburn this weekend. So they better find a gear.
There's no rest in the SEC West.
All right, so here we are now. We get to the bye week. Penn State went through it. It's a good time. There's no question about that. Sounding off is presented by our good friends, Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships.
The bye week, to be honest with you, with our situation, the emphasis on the old guys is not to bang because we just, you know, we have lingering issues that we're trying to get resolved, and the only way you're going to resolve them was with time. So what we tried to do with the older guys is take the banging off them. You know, do the mental stuff with jog-throughs and walk-throughs to work on footwork and front identification and alignment, assignment, things like that. And then we'll get back into the banging, you know, next week.
Trey, different time, different era, but Joe's basic philosophy is that Joe Paterno, Monday light, you know, Thursday light. You hated Tuesday.
I love Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, I knew you would. You love Tuesday.
Bloody Tuesday it was called. There was a reason that it was bloody. The fact that, you know, Penn State is 4-1 at this point, I'm just shocked that they're playing as well as they are. Huge game. I think the first bye week could not have come at a better time.
How do they rebound from the Northwestern game?
Well, I think you got guys that are Penn State guys. I mean, most of these guys came from great programs in high school. They won a lot. They're not used to losing. And if anyone says that they like losing, then you don't want them on their team.
Yeah, no question. But Michigan comes into this, and the list of issues there is long, things that Penn State can't worry about, but at Michigan they're worried about it.
Well, they better figure it out, too, because they're just reaching the toughest part of their schedule. They're 2-4 on the first half, and they still have Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, of course, on the schedule, and Northwestern looks like they're a little bit better than we expected. That makes you feel a little bit better about the loss. They knocked off Wisconsin, but you know, what I like about what they did in the bye week also is they worked the young guys. You know, Coach Franklin's talking about this is about building a program as well. So you rest the older guys, but you get those young guys out there scrimmaging and knocking heads a little bit and doing their thing.
Well, it is Michigan week, and as Trey referenced, it's Penn State, Michigan. It is a big game regardless. The pedigree tells you that. Part of our pedigree, the outstanding Fran Fisher, with Upon Further Review.
There is a certain faction among Nittany Lion faithful that really believes some Big Ten football officials maintain a prejudice against Penn State, which manifests itself most specifically when the Nittany Lions play Michigan. Reasoning? Most Big Ten officials are from the Midwest, some from the state of Michigan, and compounded by calls in the 2002 game at the Big House. With the game tied 21, with less than 4 minutes to play, comes real controversy. Penn State gets a drive going. On 3rd and 5 from Michigan's 45-yard line, Zach Mills threw a pass to Tony Johnson around the 23-yard line. Replays showed Johnson caught the ball not with 1 foot inbounds, but with both feet inbounds. The official called it out of bounds.
That's a catch. That was a catch. His foot was in bounds.
Instead of a field goal opportunity to win the game, it was forced into overtime, with Michigan winning 27-24. By the way, Joe's urging that play and another near game's end when referee Dave Revsine refused to honor Coach Paterno's request for a first down measurement helped bring about our current replay further review procedure. Well, call it the mellowing process, but I just can't believe any college football official would cheat. Make a mistake? Of course, but not cheat. Speaking of further review, let's end on a pleasant note. This one everybody will remember. I'm talking about last season's thriller at Beaver Stadium, when it took 4 overtimes before our Lions did it to the Wolverines 43-40. In my view, that one was one of the most entertaining and thrilling games in Penn State history. Hey, Steve, still have your pacemaker? For WHVL's Blue-White Tailgate Show, this has been Upon Further Review. I'm Fran Fisher.
Fortunately, I had to put it in right before the game. Kicked it in right about the 3rd overtime.
If you ever needed it, that was the game for it. What a thrill of ride. 4 overtimes, back and forth. That was so memorable, being on sidelines for that one.
It was, and I'll say this, you talk about the officiating. At least, replay, and Michigan, by the way, did not get a break on replay, in my opinion, in the Rutgers game. I thought the Darbo kid caught the ball and had 2 feet in and then let go of the ball out of bounds. But at least replay has minimized those mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's gotten to the point where it's such big time and the money is so big and the stakes are so high that, I mean, for us to have the technology, we're a technological society, and for us not to be able to use replay or use it effectively, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
And I prefer the college to the pros, where in the pros you have to challenge it, except in the final 2 minutes. In college, they're allegedly reviewing every play. Coming up, a look at the Nittany Lion offense as we move forward on Blue White Tailgate, presented by Coors Light. They give us these things here, and the first thing it says on here is, what is ailing the running game? Now, in all honesty, if the 3 of us really knew, we wouldn't be sitting here. We'd be over at Lash.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
We'd be getting a check from the university.
Right, but we will give it a shot here,
yes.
Okay? What do you think?
Well, I think, literally, I think it's because we've got inexperienced guys. Yeah. Normally, offensive linemen, it takes some time. You see it even in pro football. You get first-round guys, and it takes them a while to get going. I mean, the offensive line, it just takes time, and they don't have the luxury of having time.
And for James Franklin, obviously, running the football is a constant that he's asked about every week.
I don't think it's any different than what we talked about before. Just sticking with it, watching it. It's the footwork, it's the technique, it's the hand placement, it's finishing blocks and things like that.
And Todd, it's a simple case where your play action game, your screen game, things like that, all are offshoots of your running game.
And unless I'm mistaken, they haven't played a game since the last one, right? It was a bye week, yes. So it's not like they've cured it themselves. So we're going to see how they come out with it. But, Coach Franklin's talked about, let's just get us in better field positions, get us in better second and sixes, second and five. Maybe Zach Zwinick is the answer, but really Christian Hackenberg is the player to watch, and it's going to come off of that run game, Steve, that you mentioned, to see how Christian does. They want to keep him upright more often, then they need to run the ball a little bit. It's sponsored by Family Clothesline. The player to watch is Christian Hackenberg. Look, he's only got 4 touchdown passes and 6 interceptions. He needs a little bit more time to find those open receivers to get the ball in the end zone a little bit. So definitely Hackenberg is our player to watch, but I think Zach Zwinick is another one to keep an eye on if you want to get those 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
No question. And for James Franklin, there is a commitment to running the football because of what Todd just talked about.
We got to commit to the running game, and we got to be patient. And there may be, what people would call, an ugly 3-yard run. Those are beautiful. I mean, those are beautiful, and you just got to keep grinding them out. You got to stay patient. That will help our pass game. That'll help our protection. That'll help Christian. That'll help a lot of things.
The other part, too, is when we talk about offensive line, your job was always to hit the guy. Well, you obviously want to limit the hits on a guy that is the pivotal person that gives you the best shot of winning the game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Christian Hackenberg, it's like Penn State's offense is going to go with however he goes. If he plays well, I think they're going to, they're going to play well. But, what I'd like to see is I'd like to see them have more two-back sets. I mean, I'd like to see them, when you say commit to the running game, then put 2 running backs behind the line of scrimmage.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, the receivers. You really love to balance out your receivers. Do you feel, Todd, between Geno Lewis and Deshaun Hamilton, you have a pretty good 1-2 punch and balance out there?
I think so, but what I'd like to see out of both of those guys, and especially Geno Lewis, got a little bit more size than Hamilton, I'd like to see him converting those third down opportunities a little bit more, the 7-8-yard passes. As Lewis has got that 20, 30, those explosive plays, he's a guy that you can go to, but they're only 3 of 17 on third down conversions against Northwestern. It's about moving the chains and about moving it down the field, and you can't always look to the tight ends for those 6, 7, 8 yards across the middle. They need to be doing something with Lewis and Hamilton to keep those chains moving.
And to amplify your point, Todd, they were 1 of 12 on 3rd and 5 or better in that game, which dropped the season number down to 37% on 3rd and 5 or better. They were at 44%. For Deshaun Hamilton, he likes the fact that he can play off of Geno Lewis.
So far in the season, I think, basically just playing the best of my capabilities and getting back and proving what I can do. Basically, I just want to go out there and get to a fast start. I say, the whole offense as a whole, you're having a pretty good year. Geno's having a good year as well, and I'm basically having a good year because he's having a good year. We play off of one another.
Now the question is about Michigan's ability to cover them. They have a couple of veterans back there.
Well, and it's about being physical. We talked about the offensive line. Let's get them at the point of attack. It's going to be the same thing for the wide receivers, about getting some separation. If Hackenberg doesn't have a lot of time, they need to get separation quickly, and it's going to be up to the wide receivers, Trey, to be able to do that against the secondary.
Yeah, and again, it's like receivers, if you think about the great receivers that have played the game, right? You've got Jerry Rice, they've all had great running games. I mean, they need to be able to run the ball. I mean, you can have the greatest wideouts in the world. If you can't run the ball, it's not going to work.
What about handling the Michigan defensive front on top of that? Clark isn't just really good. He's outstanding. This guy's he was a 210-pounder at linebacker in high school. Now he's a 260-pounder at end.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but I'll take my shots at the 235-pound Zach Zwick. I mean, him, Belton behind him. I mean, they need to kind of establish the fact that they're going to control the line of scrimmage or try to control the line of scrimmage. If not, then it's going to be a long night, I should say.
Well, let's get to the Michigan offense in a moment against the Penn State defense. We're going to talk about that in the matchup. Devin Gardner against the Penn State defense. Gardner had a pretty good game, I thought, against Rutgers. We'll talk about that in just a few moments as we continue with Blue Light Tailgate, presented by Coors Light, right after this. C.J. Olanian from Michigan. The interception last year, Anthony Zettel from Michigan. Penn State's actually recruited pretty well in Michigan.
Absolutely.
Allen Robinson, Michigan. I just want to point that out to you a little bit. Isn't that okay there?
Want to take that helicopter he's been in and make a stop in Michigan.
The Northwestern thing is a bit deceptive on the Penn State defense. They gave up 2 drives to start. One was after a punt return. Mm-hmm. After that, they closed these guys down. I mean, essentially the defense gave up, I'm going to say, a touchdown and a half in this game.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to keep in perspective where Penn State was put in the position of field position. The field position was horrific. I mean, I think that Northwestern started on their own 40-yard line for the majority of the game, on average. I mean, you can't expect the defense you're putting too much pressure on the defense.
No question about that. Then, of course, what about the matchup? Okay, Schofield and Lewan have both moved on to the NFL. Advantage Penn State up front?
Yeah, I think so. And look, we talk about coming off the bye week. You've got to use everything to your advantage. He didn't bang the big guys, the older guys. They should be fresh, and they should be ready to come gunning for Michigan's offensive line. So we talked in weeks past, Penn State's had an advantage over other offensive lines, especially now that they should be fresh, rested, and ready to go.
Our player to watch is defensive end Deion Barnes. Remember a couple of years ago as a redshirt freshman, he was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Big things were expected last year. He had a good year, but not a dominating year. To his credit, he's come back this year. He has played very well and within himself as to how he's been able to contain the outside in combination with C.J. Alani. So our player to watch, courtesy of the family clothesline, is number 18, Deion Barnes, on defense. And he needs to impact this game. I mean, he needs to be an impact player in this game, especially with a quarterback like this.
Absolutely. He needs to get a couple of tackles for losses. He needs to put pressure. You know, I'd love to see him with a sack or two. It's going to create problems. We need to get pressure on Gardner. I mean, if we don't have pressure on Gardner, it's going to be a long night for Penn State.
Yeah, you need to force him to make those throws like he.
Yes.
Look, it's interesting, and you listen to Grady Hoke. He said, well, you know, the interception was a wrong route. He's off balance throwing the football. That was a terrible throw he made.
Yeah, he's been making some questionable decisions, but then he shows those flashes of brilliance.
Oh.
He's just back and forth. I mean, look, we all still have nightmares watching Braxton Miller run all over us last year from Ohio State.
Yeah.
And Devin Gardner shows you those flashes, and it's so frustrating when you're trying to catch a guy that has that kind of running ability.
Well, there's only one person in the nation that knows how to defend Michigan. That is John Stroh, who takes a closer look on how to contain Devin Gardner.
Last season, Devin Gardner frustrates the Penn State defense with 124 yards rushing en route to 360 yards of total offense. But the Nittany Lions rally to pull out an epic victory in overtime, and Penn State is fully aware of the issues that Gardner presents.
I think the fact that he's 6'4", 220 pounds, and probably one of the more athletic guys, you know, in terms of being able to pull the ball down and take off. You saw him do that a couple times the other night, and was able to get to the edge of the defense and really make some positive plays for him. And that's challenging because on defense there's so many things that you're trying to stop, and now you have to deal with a quarterback as well.
Gardner gouges Penn State last season with 6 runs of 10 yards or more, and he forces opposing defensive lines to maintain their discipline.
Michigan football is always known for their run game, and they've been very successful with the run game this year. So I know as far as us as D-line, we just have to be, when we rush the passer, we have to have lane integrity and make sure we discipline, because Devin Gardner, if he sees the opening, he's going to take it.
The mobility of Devin Gardner also impacts how you play in your secondary.
There's some things that you can do from a coverage perspective and making sure you have, you know, containment of the offense in terms of your defense, in terms of 2 alley defenders on either side, whether it's a strong safety and outside linebacker. But again, that creates weaknesses in other places. So you got to pick and choose your places and your battles.
Regardless of how you decide to defend him, the key is not to get frustrated.
We just make sure we don't give him too many open lanes to rush. We won't have to worry about being frustrated because the game will be going the way we want to go.
With no Derek Green and a shaky offensive line, Gardner will rely even more on his feet to make big plays this week, making corralling him an even bigger priority for the Nittany Lion defense. For the Blue White Tailgate, I'm John Stroh.
Interesting, some teams would maybe take a linebacker or a safety and spy him. You have a different thought on how you contain him.
I think the way to do it is, we had done this a bunch of times back in the 80s, and you know, the game's changed a little bit, but not that much, is where you would take, we would call it a magic coverage, where you would have a defensive lineman up front, basically kind of drop off into coverage 2 or 3 yards off the line of scrimmage. I think Anthony Zettel will be great in that role. I think if you bring pressure from the outside with Barnes and the other guy and have Zettel inside, I think it would work. I really do.
Wortman, in all likelihood, back for this game. What does that mean, especially against the tight end like Jake Butt?
Well, it brings a lot of athleticism back to the field, and, you know, linebacker's been a position that we've said doesn't have a lot of depth, and he's been right there, second leading tackler going into the Northwestern game, and it's imperative to have him back, especially when you have an athletic quarterback back there to kind of figure out what's going on, not to necessarily spy him, but to keep an eye on him to see where things are going.
Something I talk about every week is giveaway, takeaway being so important, and Penn State's almost back to even right now. Michigan's minus 13 right now, minus 13. And James Franklin on the importance of creating takeaways.
You show them the data of why turnover margin is so important in being successful. Using fundamental drills in practice to talk about ball security on offense, and on defense, stripping the ball, intercepting the ball, things like that to create turnovers.
I mentioned earlier in reference the Rutgers game, the interception. By the way, that interception led to a touchdown. They lost by 2.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys live this.
You have to create turnovers. I mean, the fact is, for Michigan to be minus 13 through the first 5 games of the season, or 6 games of the season, is absolutely you can't play a peewee schedule and win that. I mean, you're not going to win. You can't do it.
Special teams will be important, and James Franklin had emphasis on that in the bye week.
Our special teams, and looking at some of the things that we're doing, there's a couple areas that we had gray area in terms of responsibility and things like that. You don't ever want that. So I don't want the kids second-guessing themselves, the young men second-guessing themselves at the line of scrimmage or right before a play. So we were able to clean up some of those assignments and responsibilities, which I think is going to be helpful.
Recruiting, and later Dave Revsine as we continue with Blue White Tailgate presented by Coors Light.
The Nittany Lion opening the gates to the future. It is the recruiting segment here on the Blue White Tailgate, sponsored by Central PA Dock and Door, and we bring in Andrew Kalista, the Nittany Lion. You can see how charged up he is because he knows the quality of the talent that's going to be coming through that gates. Andrew, talk about recruiting for us.
A lot of reasons to shout for Penn State fans on the recruiting trail. Not so much this week. Northwestern kind of started a downward trend, and last week, Jordan Whitehead, the good corner from Western Pennsylvania, he decided to go to Pitt. Congratulations to you. You immediately seem to regret the decision by putting your head down. Nah, I'm only busting you. Congratulations, man. You're playing Division I football. I personally thought he was going to go to West Virginia, play for Coach Tom Bradley. But, hey, Penn State fans, no reason to panic. Yeah. You still have 6 of the top 8 guys in the state committed to Penn State.
And it's no surprise when you see a kid that's local, stay local, and want to play for the team that they know the best. Now, Coach James Franklin has a real specific philosophy about recruiting, and he talked about the guys and their commitments.
I would rather guys not commit. When guys try to commit, I tell them no, at first. I say, make sure you understand what you're saying and what all these things mean, and kind of go through it with them and everybody involved, and make sure that they understand, how we see it, and then if they're comfortable. And some people say, well, they should be able to go on their visits. They can. Don't commit. Keep going and visiting places and go seeing places until you're very comfortable in making a choice.
Now, you can agree or disagree with Coach Franklin's philosophy. The one thing I appreciate is the consistency of the message. He always says this. He talks about recruits, don't commit until you're 100% ready.
Yeah, I definitely like that. He says don't commit until you are ready. But one thing I don't like is once the guys are committed, some of these guys commit early. There is no early signing period in the NCAA. They're getting pressure from all these schools. Go out, take your 5 visits. You don't want to make a mistake. Go out, get wine and dine, especially down in SEC country.
All right, so we lose a cornerback. We lose a quarterback commitment as well. Tell us about that one.
Yep, Brandon Wimbosh, he's taking his talents out to Notre Dame, going to play for the fiery Irishman. Coach Kelly always screaming out his quarterbacks, it seems like, on the sidelines. Not really surprised. There were rumors out at the opening that his parents were really pushing for Stanford. Notre Dame came into the picture, took a visit out there. He did commit early on a whim, so it's no surprise. Penn State, though, I believe the staff was ready for this. They're already in on Brandon McElwain from Council Rock North in Pennsylvania, and Jake Zembeck up in Rochester, New York. Also, Coach Ronnie has followed a couple guys that are currently committed to other schools on Twitter, so that's something to look out for.
All right, we got a minute left, and look, they were setting the world on fire on the recruiting trail, but another bit of bad news to pass along.
Yeah, the most vocal guy in Penn State's class, Adam McClain, even had Penn State shaved into his head. He's taken his 5 visits. Michigan State's pushing him hard. He also said he wanted to get down to Ole Miss, so maybe with their upset of Alabama, a couple things going on right there. But hey, you're 18 years old, man. Go out, get wine and dine by these big-time schools.
Especially down south with the state of Mississippi all of a sudden making all these waves with Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Okay, the Health South injury update we mention every week. Don't get a lot of extra information coming out of the coaching staff about injuries, but it's nice to see Naeem Wortman is listed at number 1 on the depth chart back at linebacker, so we expect to see him back on the field against the Wolverines, and they are going to need his services. That is the recruiting segment here. Thanks to Andrew for all the good information. We're going to be right back here on the Blue White Tailgate presented by Coors Light.
You hear that music? music, and it's depressing. I mean, really, thanks for bringing the whole show down. Who chose that? I mean, seriously. This is not like there aren't a couple. If you're somebody covering this team, it's not like there's a shortage of things to talk about.
Wow. It's a record-breaking team. First time in the 135-year history of the Michigan Wolverines. They had 3 losses before October.
Wow.
I mean, that is not even hitting the conference schedule. This is a team whose issues you can't even begin to touch on. And really, I just wanted to bring attention to Brady Hoke, the head coach, obviously under fire. But this is from his press conference, and just listen to him. He sounds like a man trying to dance around questions. He sounds defeated, and just someone searching for solutions.
On Saturday, I thought our guys were united. I thought they played hard together. I think they played and fought. Sometimes that doesn't guarantee you anything, but their effort as a team was something that I was proud of.
It's a scene all too familiar for Brady Hoke and the Wolverines. Dramatic losses that spark jubilant celebrations at their expense. Michigan is now the big black and blue. 10 setbacks in their last 14 games have bruised their egos and left them searching for silver linings.
Sometimes fighting alone doesn't get a victory, but I think we need to change those results and execute a little better, coach a little better. Always starts with me and us. And then, you know, there was some good progress that was made.
Really, good progress that was made. I mean, 10 out of 14 games they've lost now. And look, some of the issues in the close games can be laid at his feet. Some of the games aren't even close. I mean, they're blown out at home by Minnesota. Yeah. Notre Dame shut out 31-0. Notre Dame's a pretty good ball club, but nobody's hailing their defense as being anything special. No, I'm not done. It's just crazy.
Well, remember, they were 5-0 coming in here last year.
Yeah.
This was the game that started them on the path down this road. Yet in watching the Rutgers game, I thought Devin Gardner, interception aside, it was one interception. Now, in a 2-point game, it was important. But I thought he actually played pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, he is a very good player. He's very athletic. He can run the ball. He can move the chains. He can do a lot of those things, but he can't do it alone. I mean, last I checked, there are 10 other guys on the field, and he needs help.
And Steve, to your point, that's what makes him dangerous, in my opinion.
Sure.
I mean, you got this guy he's got experience, and he can come up with a good game. But at some point, as the coach, you look at your guys and go, have you seen enough? When are you going to turn this around? I mean, they have talented guys. They have some ability. I just hope they don't turn it around this Saturday night.
Right. Let's look at the numbers, Todd. The numbers show us straight out what they've done. I mean, there's their rushing offense. That's not Michigan. Can't be a rushing offense, but it is. And, of course, scoring offense right there at 22.3. All right, so now, I mean, you look at something like that. Devin Funchess is interesting. He's really, really good. But you almost feel like he's out of position where he is.
He absolutely is out of position. I mean, the fact is he's got wheels. He's a big guy. He's almost like a guy who would be kind of an athletic tight end type guy, you know, in the pro scheme, but he's not. He's out on the edge, and he's a good player.
Derek Green can't play out for the year, broken collarbone, and James Franklin knows there's depth there, but Green's a loss.
Most people rotate their tailbacks, so you've had a chance to see them and evaluate them. I mean, the guy that we're expecting to be playing, number 4, Devion Smith, he's averaging 6 yards a carry, and he's got 4 touchdowns, from what I understand. So he's played, he's been successful, and we understand it's going to be a challenge.
Norfleet's interesting. You watch him on returns, and he's really good, but then you see what he does as a receiver. He's less than 10 yards a catch.
Yeah, 10 catches, 78 yards, and it's really, they're not getting them downfield enough. And, maybe they're having some of the same issues Penn State's having as far as giving their quarterbacks enough time to get their receivers downfield to get open. But a guy that talented should be finding a little bit more, yak, right? Yards after catch. He should be making some people miss.
Did he just say yak? I think he just said yak.
I brought it out.
Unbelievable. I mean, okay, what team in the country is named the Fighting Yaks?
Yeah, exactly. Who's that?
Come on. The defense for Michigan, they have 2 interceptions, one by Willie Henry, which he ran back for a score, one by Jordan Lewis. They've forced 1 fumble. But when I look at Frank Clark, and then Henry. I mean, as a linebacker, what kind of premium does a player like that help out a linebacker?
Well, I mean, the fact is that the guys are athletic, they're strong, they control the gap that, most of them right now, it's gap responsibility in college football, so they control the gaps, they control the guy in front of them, and it makes it, actually, I think it's making their linebackers a lot better than they really are.
Bolden leads them in tackles, but they had to take Jake Ryan because Desmond Morgan's hurt and flip him into the middle. Different traffic pattern, but he's a really good footballer.
Kind of reminds you a little bit of Mike Hull, doesn't it? Jake Ryan, a guy that can be everywhere. Yeah.
Poor man's Mike.
A poor man's Hull, I guess, from what Trey says.
Mike Hull.
Yeah, but the difference is Hull is really good against the pass. That's not Ryan's forte.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the difference.
Well, and both guys are the kind of guys that you look at the plays over and you go, oh, he's around the ball again. It's just one of those guys that have that instinct. They can read what's happening. They go with the flow, and somehow at the end of the play, they're near the ball. They're near the ball carrier.
How concerned do each of you get, though, about the fact to me, I see the strength of the Michigan defense being up front. How concerning is that, considering how this has played out so far?
Well, it's very concerning. I mean, considering like watching Penn State and watching our offensive line, or lack thereof in spots. I mean, that is a strength of their defense. It's clearly a weakness for Penn State, and that's why I think it's going to be really important to establish the running game.
All right. How about Deshaun Hamilton and Geno Lewis? They have to match up against that secondary. How does Deshaun Hamilton see it playing out?
We see that they like to run with us. Like they're DBs, they play a lot of man. They're in your face a little bit, or basically they're just trying to match athleticism with athleticism on the outside. And then their front seven, there's a pretty good front seven, one of the better defenses that will play. In that aspect. And
I think the front seven part again. Clark played not just a good game last year in Beaver Stadium. Frank Clark played a great game in Beaver Stadium last year. I know I've mentioned him a couple of different times. But again, off the edge, that's the guy you got to worry about.
Well, it seems like all the conversations we're having is they kind of mirror each other in certain ways, these two teams, right? I mean, our strengths against their weaknesses, their strengths against our weaknesses. It's really going to be about the playmakers. Who's going to step up and make a play on there? If we have to run away from Clark, we'll run away from Clark. They got to run away from Deion Barnes. We'll see if Deion Barnes can get pressure on them. Look, this thing may come down to field goals again. It did last year, 43-40, 4 overtimes. Michigan's a 2-point favorite in the game at home. So obviously, odds makers feel this thing's going to be close. And their kicker, Steve, we were talking about, hasn't missed a field goal yet. Wow, 17 of 17 for the year. Last year, we were helped by the guy missing a couple field goals. So maybe he'll miss a few this week and help us out.
We'll see how that plays out. The crowd and playing there. I mean, here's one. If Penn State gets up on them, they can turn on them.
I know they're definitely going to turn on them. I mean, they've done it already. I mean, the fact is that, I think we're going to get more people cheering for us than cheering for them. I mean, that's kind of, you would never say that at Michigan, but everything that's happened with Brady and Dave Brandon, I mean, that's a program in trouble.
Coming up, we'll talk to Dave Revsine from BTN, and later, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I got the good as we continue after this. Welcome back. Great to have you with us, and joined now by Dave Revsine from BTN. Dave, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Hey, Steve. Hey, Trey. What's going on, guys?
Yeah.
How are you?
All right, so let's get to it. I mean, you have some interesting races starting to develop in this Big Ten. You never know how storylines play out, Dave. How interested are you by how this is starting to play out?
Yeah, kind of fascinating. I mean, the West in particular is a real muddled mess, which I'm not sure I anticipated it being quite this way with some of the teams that are factors in it being factors in it. So I think that's interesting. And, the East, obviously, it seems like we have a little bit of separation at the top. I mean, I think we're starting to see who the best teams on that side are, but there's still a lot of football to be played. So, one or two conference games in, you can't write anyone off.
Hey, Dave, so what do you think, compare the Big Ten West versus the SEC West?
Well, a little bit different, I'd say. They both have West in their names.
Yes.
So there's a clear similarity there. Look, the SEC West is really, really good. I mean, no doubt about it. I'm fascinated to see at the end of the year how good some of these teams truly are. We look at LSU, for instance, at the beginning of the year, you thought, well, this is a great team, and Then they play a close game against Wisconsin, and then they haven't played well at all since then, and Wisconsin hasn't played well at all either. And maybe LSU just isn't that good. I mean, I know it's tough for people to kind of accept that possibility because they are in the SEC West, but it's possible that they're just not a great team. I'm not convinced Texas A&M is a great team. But that being said, look, there are some really, really good teams in that division. There's no doubt in my mind that it's the best division in college football. I'm just not sure it's the best division in the history of the planet.
I am going to get the plug in here for something I thoroughly enjoyed and read it in 2 days, the opening kickoff that you wrote. How gratified have you been by the reaction to it? Because it's obviously a passionate piece of work that you put a lot of research into, Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. It's been over the top, honestly. The feedback that I've gotten from people has just, when you put that much time into something, and it was 4 years, and it is a lonely pursuit. I mean, you know, there's a lot of time just spent on your own in libraries and archives, and I wrote a lot of the book sitting at Starbucks and just looking outside, because a lot of it was during summers, and thinking, man, think of all the things I could be doing right now. But I've taken this on because I love it, and I'm so passionate about it, and I just think there's a great story to be told here. But you do think back to those moments, and the feedback from people has been great. It's made a couple of bestseller lists, which has been mind-boggling to me. So from every point of view that you could think of, it has been an incredibly gratifying deal. But even if that stuff hadn't happened, you know, just to have been able to tell this story and to kind of open up this world that I don't think people know a whole lot about the very, very earliest years of college football, and to answer that question of how did we get here? How did we arrive at this place where you have this large-scale athletic enterprise connected to a university system? We're the only people in the world who do it, and why is it? And I just think some of the answers are amazing.
That's unbelievable. I totally agree with that. So what is your take on Penn State at Michigan? You got two-story programs, again, like the first Big Ten night game in Michigan history, which I don't understand what that means, but I guess it is. What do you think about the game?
Well, they've never had a conference game at home at night. They've had some non-conference games, so that's what that one's about. But I don't know what to make of Michigan. I mean, it is such a mess right now. However, I thought they showed some signs of life last week. I mean, I thought their offense made a lot more sense. They were in the spread. I thought they played a little bit more to Devin Gardner's strengths than they have in the past. So that was a positive. But then, you know, you lose, I think, far and away their best running back in Derek Green. He's out for the year. That hurts them quite a bit. Davion Smith's has had some moments, and I think he's going to need to be the workhorse now. But kind of just when you felt like maybe there were some signs of life from the offense, they lose him. And then defensively, they just look completely lost. I think Christian Hackenberg's got to be salivating looking at what Gary Nova did. But, you know, that being said, I mean, this is the first time we've seen Penn State since Northwestern made that offensive line look ordinary would be, I think, kind. I mean, really made them look bad. And did they get better in those 2 weeks? So I think there are question marks on both teams. I think this will be a really interesting game to watch.
No question, Dave. And now here comes the part where I say, okay, in 30 seconds. If I could tell anybody that on the planet, it would be you. So in 30 seconds, you know, what does it mean for the conference that it's still Penn State, Michigan on this particular night?
Big. Those are still marquee programs. No doubt. I mean, I always say there are 4 huge brand names in the Big Ten. Those are 2 of them. The other 2 are Ohio State and Nebraska. For the league to be great, those teams have to be hitting on all cylinders. I feel like Penn State is headed in that direction. I think they have the right guy, and getting the scholarships back is going to be huge. Obviously, I don't think you can overstate it. Michigan's got a lot of work to do to get to the point where they're maximizing their resources. But it's always huge to have those brand names in a spotlight game.
Dave Revsine, BTN, author of the opening kickoff as well. Thanks so much for the time, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Steve. Thanks, Trey. Take care, guys.
Yep, be well.
We'll come back with more after this. We affectionately call this the good, the bad, the ugly. I get the good. It's only because we draw straws. It has nothing to do with personalities. The good was an entertaining, great weekend of college football where the alleged upset was in vogue. But you know what? It shows how much the gap has closed.
I'm going to take the bad, and then I'm going to add a really bad. The bad would be the schedule makers. We only got 2 games in October. Well, we're going to play this one and then have another bye week and have to wait for the Ohio State game. So that's kind of the bad. The really bad is the defense of USC against a Hail Mary versus Arizona State, where you just sit there and wait for the ball to come to you instead of going up and batting it down. That is basic defense. They failed to execute, and it cost them a victory.
The ugly is 3 shades of ugly. Is Nick Saban whining like he's sucking on a lemon after the press conference after the game?
Say that about Alabama.
Uglier is the fact that you have Michigan's head football coach claiming moral victories. They're 2-4 and they're staying together as a team. And the ugliest thing is that Mississippi State football, they've got 2 teams in the top 10 for the first time ever. That's really ugly.
That's how many times you reference Mississippi football during the You're done with this.
Yes.
You're done.
Yeah. Bring back Brett Favre.
Top 25. Should I ask if any of these games interest you? Oregon's at UCLA. These are, I mean, they both have to bounce back here.
Yeah, Oregon. Everybody thought, Pac-12, they're going to get to the Final Four, to the playoffs. Not so quick. They seem to always stumble on some part of their schedule. Did a little earlier this year than they normally do.
Ole Miss, I hope you enjoyed your Alabama win. You got to go to College Station.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a very quick and fleeting for them because I don't think that they can play with those guys, and I think it's a loss for them.
Gary Patterson's a defensive genius. Well, he better be against Baylor. We'll find out about that. Boy, Mississippi State, I hope you really enjoyed your win over Texas A&M. You got Auburn in Starkville.
No time to celebrate. You got to get right back to work to face Auburn. At least they're at home. They don't have to go anywhere else for this one, but they got Auburn to come to town, and Auburn looks awfully good right now.
Okay, Big Ten. Indiana's at Iowa, Northwestern at Minnesota, Michigan State at Purdue. Anything interest you there?
No, it doesn't. None of those games interest me. I don't really care. I care about Penn State at Michigan, 8 o'clock in the Big House.
Other than the door is open for Michigan State, right? The Spartans, the door is kind of open for them. If they're able to run the table somehow, they could slide themselves into that Final Four.
And by the way, guess what? Northwestern Minnesota, the winner takes the lead in the West. Who would have thought that? All right, keys to the game. All right, keys to the game. We're going to start with you and your keys.
Keys to the game are, can Penn State contain Devin Gardner? We cannot give up long runs. I mean, again, I think he had 6 10-plus yards last year. I think, can we protect Christian Hackenberg? And again, it's going to come down to turnovers.
Tempo is going to be very important in this game. I think you can change some tempos up during the course of this game, and even though Gardner can be a threat, don't be afraid to kick it up just a gear tempo-wise. And agree, giveaway, takeaway is huge because Michigan's minus 13. You have to make sure when they're done, they're minus 16.
I'm going to go to the rushing game. I know it's the obvious part of it, but Trey mentioned something that's interesting. I'd love to see 2 back sets as well. Whatever happened to the fullback leading them through the line to do something. But if you're going to talk about the bruisers, I'm going to go back to Zach Zwinnak. I'd like to see him have a modest goal of 50 yards rushing in this game, at least advancing it a little bit, getting them in that 3 yards in a cloud of dust. 2nd and 7, 2nd and 6 is a little bit easier to move the chains.
It says here on Big Ten games, Trey is supposed to talk for 35 seconds about these games. I don't care isn't 35 seconds.
I don't care. I mean, I care about, I'm serious, I care about one game. I care about Penn State, Michigan. The rest of them I really don't care.
You know, for Michigan, this will be the first game in the Big Ten they've ever played at night. Now, that's how they're billing the game, and I don't think you care about that either.
I don't care about that because it's not true. They've had night games at Michigan. It's just because it's not the Big Ten. It's not the Big Ten. I mean, it's kind of like, it just makes no sense to me.
Okay. Doesn't make sense to him.
Doesn't make sense to him. He'll be watching tonight, at night, right? You got to watch the game.
You got to watch the game at night. Last I checked, that night there'll be lights.
At night.
Yes.
We'll see if the students are there for the opening kickoff. They say they want to boycott at Michigan and then be in later. For Trey, Todd, I'm Steve. Thanks for joining us on Blue White Tailgate, presented by our good friends at Coors Light.